All right. Thanks everybody for joining. We'll go ahead and we'll get started. My name is Mitchell Blenden. I am the SAEM Rams Secretary and Treasurer. And this is going to be the SAEM Rams MyERAS updates webinar. We're going to go over the ERAS application for the 2024 cycle. We'll review some changes to the experiences section, the addition of the geographic preferencing section, and updates to the program signaling component of ERAS. We're going to be joined by two people today, Dr. Alexis Pelletier-Bui, who's an assistant professor of emergency medicine at Cooper Medical School at Rowan University, and Dr. Elizabeth Werley, who's an associate professor of emergency medicine at the Penn State University College of Medicine. So if you guys want to go ahead and take it away, please feel free.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us today. And we are honestly here on behalf of CORD as well, the Council of Residency Directors in Emergency Medicine. Liz is our current chair for the Application Process Improvement Committee through CORD, and I'm a former chair too. So just wanted to add that to our introductions as well. But let's get started. So thank you so much for joining us today. As Mitch mentioned, the ERAS application is going to be looking a little bit different this year, and we wanted to make sure that you guys are all aware of those updates. I'm sure you're asking, like, why does this really matter? Because it's going to be new to me regardless, right? You guys are probably all first-time applicants, or most of you are, to emergency medicine, and so all of it's going to be new regardless. But the big reason why we really wanted to make sure you are aware of these changes is because you oftentimes receive advice from the residents who may have just applied to emergency medicine, or faculty members who, maybe have done it 5 years ago, and things change very quickly. So we want to make sure you're aware of the most up-to-date advice, so that you don't get confused at all during the process. So we'll get started and let you know. And before we get started, I do actually also want to thank the ACEP team, the AAMC team, excuse me, and Richard Peng from the AAMC team, who provided some of these slides and a lot of the data here that we'll be discussing. So the reason why the ERAS application was updated this year is because it's more than 20 years old, more than 20 years since they changed anything in the application. And obviously, a lot has changed in the residency application process over this time frame. There's been an increase in residency applications across all specialties, an increase in the number of residency programs, transition from board scores to pass-fail, more of a focus on holistic application review, just to name a few things. And obviously, technology itself has changed a lot in 20 years. So ERAS realized they really needed to get with the times and change in a way that was useful for both programs and applicants.
So you may have heard about the ERAS supplemental application, which was the AAMC's attempt to kind of try out different potential changes to the previous application. It started with 3 specialties, which are highlighted here in blue, and that was 2 years ago. And then this past academic year and application cycle, it expanded to 16 specialties, including emergency medicine. Each participating specialty had a minimum of 2 representatives that met regularly with researchers and education specialists from ERAS, the larger AAMC, and the NRMP. And Alexis and I were the 2 representatives for emergency medicine. There were 3 main goals of the supplemental application. The first was really to update questions on the application to reflect the current societal and educational context. Program directors in all specialties and applicants as well, but program directors really wanted to learn more about the applicants' interests and non-academic experiences in their journey to medical school and residency. And applicants and advisors really wanted programs to focus on things other than board scores in specific medical schools when trying to determine who to interview. So the SUP app was designed to help applicants share that information about their journey to residency along their medical education pathway. The previous version of the ERAS application was really cumbersome with a lot of free text, open-based fields, and limited searchability. This made holistic review really difficult, especially given the ever-increasing number of applications. With the new ERAS application, there's better and more structured information, and applicants can input that data quite a bit easier this time around, and that's going to help drive holistic review. However, the AAMC did not make these decisions lightly, and they used a lot of input, as you can see here, from all these various sources, and feedback from applicants was one of the key sources of information for these decisions. The ERA supplemental application consisted of 3 components: a past experiences section, the introduction of geographic preferences, and program signaling. Emergency medicine chose to only participate in the program signaling component of the SUP app last year. The experiences section was designed, as we kind of alluded to already, to showcase who the applicant is and their journey to residency by highlighting experiences that they find particularly meaningful, as well as to explain any challenges or hardships that the applicants may have overcome on that path. The geographic preferences section was designed to give applicants who wish to do so the opportunity to describe their interest in a particular geographic region or community setting, meaning urban or rural. It's been shown in literature in different specialties that both program directors and applicants view geographic location as a very important factor in selecting residencies. Up until this point, however, there was no standardized way to input this data into the application or retrieve this data from the application, and programs really had to infer it from other data points, such as the applicant's hometown or their medical school or the location of their previous experiences. Now applicants have the opportunity to communicate clearly what their preferences are, but even more importantly, they get to explain why they have those preferences. And then finally, program signaling gives applicants the opportunity to express genuine interest in select residency programs at the time of application.
All right, so there was some value found in each of these 3 sections. So select components have been integrated into the upcoming MyERAS application. That means there is no supplemental ERAS application. So if you hear anything about this from anybody who graduated recently, it no longer exists. MyERAS will now have an updated experiences section, the addition of geographic preferences, and program signaling for the specialties that have decided to participate. There's 20 specialties who have decided to participate, and emergency medicine is one of those specialties. So now we're going to move on to more detail about the new MyERAS application. So as Liz mentioned before, there was a lot of free text responses in the old version of the ERAS application. Now geographic information or data will be standardized for everybody, facilitating input for applicants as well as review for programs. So applicants will need to enter postal codes, cities, states, etc. And this will apply to their addresses, hometowns, experiences, education, and training. Applicants can also input a setting type for each of those locations, such as urban, suburban, or rural. And now, because it is free text, applicants can't put up to 10 hometowns. They are going to be limited to up to 5 hometowns. Now, do you need to put 5 hometowns? No, if you have 1 hometown, you put 1 down. But they wanted to make sure that they had a large enough number for those applicants who may have moved around a lot in their life. All right, so let's jump into each of the updated sections. So first, we're going to discuss the experiences section. So when revamping this section, there was really a huge focus on holistic review. And we wanted to enable that in a way that was both efficient and easier for both applicants to complete and programs to use. MyERAS, again, will have a more standardized format for reporting experiences that removes unimportant or irrelevant information that was in the prior version. It really minimizes those free text responses and essay areas, and now adds mission-based filters so that it can allow for better applicant and program mission matches. In the past, applicants were able to input any number of experiences that they wanted, including some one-offs that often demonstrated really little time, effort, or commitment on behalf of the applicant. And this made the experience section look really robust for the applicant as far as volume goes, but in the end, it didn't really paint an accurate or adequate picture of applicants to programs. And ERAS really wanted to shift the focus to quality over quantity, so no more experience padding. And so the way that they did this is by deciding to limit the number of experiences to 10 total. From these 10, applicants have the opportunity to choose their top 3 most meaningful. And they also expanded on the experience types. So in the past, it was just research, volunteer service advocacy, and work. And now you can see in bold all the new experience types as well. And I want to make some important points about some of these experience types. So first, for the education and training, this means any additional voluntary training, like maybe you did a Stop the Bleed or MAT waiver. This is not your formal education like college, post-bac, medical school, etc. That is still going to be in a separate area in the application. You see research is here listed as an experience. Now that's talking about longitudinal research, assistant sort of opportunities. Any publications, presentations, etc., are still going to be in a separate part. So you do not need to use an experience for every single publication that you may have. And lastly, there's no longer a dedicated area in MyERAS for hobbies. So that means you're really going to need to make some hard decisions as to whether or not you want to include hobbies on your application. Now that it's going to take up one of those limited experiences. In general, we would advise that you really only list a hobby if you've dedicated a significant amount of time or effort to that hobby. So for each experience, you will have 1,020 characters, not words, characters, to describe that role, your context, the responsibilities, etc. And then for the top 3 most meaningful, you have an additional 300 characters to explain why was that experience meaningful, what did you learn or value from that experience. And for a little bit of context, 300 characters is really not that long. It's only about 2 to 5 sentences. All right, in reviewing the data from the MyERAS SUP app, so this is not EM-based data because EM did not participate in this part, but for those who did participate in this component of the SUP app last year, most of the reported experiences were within the realm of volunteerism, education, training, and work. But there really was a wide variability across the most common reported experience types among specialties. But what was common was that the experiences that were reported were really in depth in terms of the amount of time spent in each experience, with about 76% of them being recurring, either daily or weekly. And for all the experience types, except for the education and training, the median number of time that was spent on these experiences exceeded a year. So what should you take away from this? Again, make sure you are focusing on those hobbies where you really spend a significant amount of time. For example, if you worked an industry job in college, perhaps a service industry job, maybe waitressing, working in retail. I've had a lot of applicants who think that it's not relevant because it isn't necessarily medical. That is actually extremely valuable for emergency medicine and teaches you a lot of skills that are valuable. And we'd much rather know about that, except other than, say, a one-time medical tent volunteer opportunity. That's much less valuable for your application. All right, now for each experience, you also will now have the option of choosing a single selection for a setting type, focus area, and key characteristic for each experience. This will then allow programs to filter through applications in a way that may align with their program's values and missions. And so because it is single select for each experience, we really advise you to choose wisely and try to choose across the breadth of focus areas and key characteristics so that you're depicting yourself as a well-rounded applicant. In bold, you can see the most commonly reported focus areas and key characteristics. Now, while this is optional to choose these drop-down selections, we don't know how program directors are going to be using this quite yet, and they may be using it to filter applicants, again, in a good way to make sure that there's a good mission match, but because they may use it as a filter, you want to make sure that you do fill it out. And the last change to the experiences section is the other impactful experience essay. So I do want you to focus here on this because it is a little bit tricky. So this is designed to give applicants the opportunity to describe any major hardships or challenges that they've encountered on their journey to residency. It seems counterintuitive to not complete an applicant question, but this section is really optional and it's not going to apply to all of you. Here are some examples, while not all inclusive, but are good examples of the intention of this question. So is there something about your family background that was challenging? Were you a first-generation college student? Financial background, did you come from a low-income family? Did you have to work while you were in college or while you were in medical school to help support your family? Did you grow up in a community setting where you dealt with food scarcity, where there were high rates of poverty or crime, where there was lack of access to medical care? Did you not have similar access or adequate access to advisors and mentors in your education? And other general life experiences like loss of a family member, personal illness, having to care for a sick family member while you were working or in school, or maybe starting a family on your own. Here you can see the themes that actually emerged, the most common ones when applicants did fill this out. And many of them were along the original intent of the question, and some of them not so much. And the ones that were not really along the original intent are highlighted here in red. So really, on a spectrum from common to exceptional experiences, the expectation is really more for the latter. So getting accepted into medical school has been a challenge for pretty much everybody who goes into medical school. It's not uncommon to have to apply for a couple times to get in. Similarly, failing courses, failing exams, having academic struggles, also not a particularly uncommon experience. These aren't the kinds of things that they're looking for. But say you failed a clerkship because a family member, a close family member died. That's a bit different. I do think that would fall into this realm. So I don't want to say absolute nots for these things that are in red, but if it seems like it's a common struggle without any other associated challenges with it, it's probably not what this question is really getting at. All right, so how is this different from the personal statement? So your personal statement still exists and is still important for your application, and everybody should be working on that now. So that is required for everybody, where the impactful experience essay, again, is optional and only if you have experienced some of the hardships. With the addition of the impactful experience essay, now applicants do not have to feel the need to explain those things in their personal statement. And you can instead use your personal statement to explain, why do you like emergency medicine? Why do you want to go into EM? Why are you a good fit for EM? What are the values or attributes that you can bring to a program? And what is it that you are looking for in a program? What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? So just a little bit of a change in focus for the personal statement.
All right, next I'll be discussing the geographic preferences section. In this section, applicants can select up to 3 of the 9 U.S. Census divisions shown here on the map, along with the ability to write a very short response describing each divisional preference. Applicants can also choose the option to state that they do not have a division preference, and again, they can explain the reasoning behind that. Applicants also have the ability to indicate a preference for a particular setting or environment, whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, or anything along that spectrum. And again, they have that short answer response to explain their choice. What's it going to look like to programs? Well, programs will only be able to see information if an applicant chooses no division preference, or they select the same geographic division in which the program is located. The area will be blank to programs if an applicant chooses a division in which the program is not located, or the applicant skips the question altogether. This past year, most applicants chose to report at least one divisional preference in all specialties except one. And the large majority of those chose to incorporate that short answer response explaining their reasoning behind that preference. About a quarter of all applicants selected no geographic preference, and about 10% of all eligible applicants actually skipped the question. There was a broad range of applicants who reported no preference for the rural or urban setting, but of those who did report a preference, the majority of those preferred urban over rural. And these findings held true across all participating specialties. In descending order here, you can see which factors were considered most commonly by the applicants who completed the GeoPref section. And of the applicants who selected that they did not have a division preference, 43 to 62% of them indicated that geography was either not important to them, or they were concerned that the programs would overlook their application if they did not select any type of division. Now, moving on to program signaling. Alexis and I know this information because we've been working on it together for a few years now. But signaling is probably new to you because you're first-time applicants for the large majority of you. We'll recap some of the background information on signaling and then share some data from the program signaling experience in EM and the other specialties this past year. So preference signaling evolved out of game theory, and the field of labor economics brought it to light about a little over a decade ago now, almost a decade and a half. First, it was used to match employers with high-yield employee prospects, so people that expressed genuine interest in specific employers and weren't those applicants who were just applying broadly for jobs across the whole country. It was brought to the med ed literature by Ortho and ENT in 2017 and 2018, followed by a computer simulation by ENT the following year. In the 2021 application cycle, ENT went live with signaling via one of their specialty-specific organizations. And then in 21-22, MyERAS introduced the supplemental application with internal medicine, dermatology, and general surgery. And urology also implemented signaling via one of their specialty-specific organizations. And as we had already discussed, this past academic year, emergency medicine was one of 16 specialties participating in the MyERAS SUP-app. And EM and OB-GYN were the two of those specialties that only implemented the program signaling component. So why signaling? Why is it important? Why did we choose to go with this for our specialty? Well, there's several proposed advantages to signaling. It increases transparency. Applicants can, express, I want to specifically be at your program, or at least I specifically want to apply to your program, and I really want an interview there. It's fair and it's equitable for applicants. It's incorporated into the cost of the application, so there's no additional fee, and each signal carries the same weight, and every applicant's offered the same number of signals. So that's about as equitable as it can get. It's, again, low cost and low effort. It may decrease unnecessary communication, help relieve some of that interview congestion that we see, and reduce cancellations, thereby improving the overall application experience for both applicants and programs. And after 2 years worth of data, program directors continue to say that it helps them identify candidates that they might have otherwise looked using their old application review process. So a couple things about signaling. Signals are only intended to be used by programs during the application review phase. Programs will get to know if the program was signaled, and they'll have a little icon demonstrating that the signal is there. If an applicant does not send a signal to a specific program, or they skip the question altogether, then no information is displayed and the program just sees a little blank area on that part of the application. Now, it's important to know, because it's on the application, if you signal a program, programs and other members of that program are permitted to ask questions during the interview as to why the applicant signaled the program. It is a fair game and legal question. Now, the contrary is not approved. A program cannot ask why an applicant did not signal them, where else the applicant may have signaled, nor can programs disclose any information about signaling, whether an applicant did or did not signal them, to anyone else. So that information is forbidden. As signaling evolves, specialties have taken various approaches over the past 1 to 2 years, going from smaller number of signals to larger number of signals to even a tiered approach. The number of signals varies by each specialty. And so we want you to follow your EM specific guidance for this. Don't necessarily listen to your classmates who are applying to other specialties, because they're going to have different data points. They're going to have different information. Emergency medicine's really following the data closely for these various approaches. For this application cycle, we're using 7 signals, but we're going to watch how the data plays out over the next year to see, do we need to change our approach for future cycles? And across all specialties, applicants on average are really using the maximum number of signals because it's really to your advantage. I don't know why you wouldn't want to use all of your signals. So here's another key point that we really, really want you to pay close attention to. Each specialty, including emergency medicine, has given different advice in previous years pertaining to home and away rotations. So again, If you're listening to someone who's applied before you, they may be giving you misinformation that doesn't apply to this application cycle. The AAMC asked all specialties to take one universal approach to home and away rotations. And that is specifically to signal only the programs that you want, independent, regardless of home or away rotation status. Just apply those signals to your top 7 programs.
All right, so I do want to reiterate some of those things that Liz said, just so it's very clear what the EM specific guidance is. So EM is offering 7 signals per applicant this year, with each of those holding equal weight. So Liz mentioned some specialties are using a tiered system. So OBGYN, radiology, dermatology, anesthesiology. And what that means is they have gold signals and silver signals, with gold signals holding more weight. EM is not doing that. All of your signals are weighing the same. Also, you can only signal or send one signal to each program. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, say, I really want to be at X program, and send all of your signals there. Each program can only receive one signal per applicant. And lastly, the golden rule is only signal programs in which you're truly interested. Do not game the system to the point that it is to your disadvantage. Now, are there some strategies that you may want to use to maximize your signals? Absolutely, and we'll cover that next, but no strategy should ever supersede your true interests. All right, so we see here the top factors that applicants took into consideration when they were choosing where to send their signals. And it's no surprise that geographic location and being close to family and friends were at the top of that list. Time and time again, applicants have cited that as the most important factor in deciding where to apply. And then perceived goodness of fit and program strengths aligning with career interests were also in second place, all tied. Now, squeaking in at number 5 was the perceived chance of interview offer. So that did come into play when people were deciding where to send signals. When asked about their strategy, the majority, so 59% of EM applicants said they chose a mix of less and more competitive programs. But about a quarter did decide that they were going to signal all programs that they felt they would have had more difficulty getting into, so those reach programs, and about 14% just those programs that they felt they would have less difficulty getting into, or their safety programs. All right, so let's review the distribution of both applications and signals across the programs in emergency medicine, so you have a better idea of how signals may be utilized at individual programs. So each individual program is listed across the bottom on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis, you can see the number of applications and the number of signals. So in light blue, you can see that some programs received almost 1,500 applications this past year, and some as few as the low 100s. So great variability there. Same with signals. So the maximum amount of signals that were received were 203, the minimum was 2, and the mean was 53. And this 53 represents about 8% of applications on average received by the residency program. But the range was 1% to 22% of applications. So you can imagine for a program where the number of signals that they received only represented about 1% of their applications, it might be a lot more valuable to that program to receive a signal than a program where 22% of their applications came along with a signal. So advisors tend to know which programs tend to receive more or less. So you should work with an experienced advisor to kind of figure out what may be best for you, depending on your particular applicant profile. And this could go either way. So an applicant may choose to not signal a highly competitive program because they may think that the yield would be low. Likewise, they may choose to not signal a less competitive program because they feel the interview yield is already high there anyway. So again, just work with your advisors so that you can really come up with the best strategy for you. But again, at the end of the day, golden rule, always choose the programs you're actually genuinely interested in.
All right, so for those who are curious about how signaling actually performed in EM, we're going to review that right now. Emergency medicine had a high participation rate from our programs, with 261 out of 276 programs participating. fairly easy for us to participate, especially when that was the only component of the SUP app that we were doing at the time. Here you can see the predicted probability of being invited to interview based on whether or not an applicant sends a signal. Plotted is the median predicted probability of an interview offer based on signal or no signal. And as you can see, the probability of interview offer almost doubled if an applicant sent a signal. So takeaways here, when you look at the little vertical purple lines, that represents variation across programs. We should note that sending a program signal does not guarantee an interview invitation. However, the opposite, or the corollary to that, is not sending a signal does not exclude you from receiving an interview invitation. It's not a guarantee one way or the other. So again, continue to signal those programs in which you are genuinely interested. We also wanted to share some prelim EM data specifically on signaling based on in-state or out-of-state status. You can see the out-of-state information on the left and the in-state information on the right. Signaling is in blue, or the with the little signal token underneath it, and then non-signaling is the bar on the left in light green. You can see the little area that's highlighted with the blue rectangle is the median predicted interview probabilities. And it's pretty similar for in-state applicants who did not signal versus out-of-state applicants who did signal. Regardless of in-state or out-of-state status, the presence of the signal definitely helps with receiving an interview offer. And we thought it was important to share with you that this information when trying to signal. So if you're really trying to decide between two programs that are pretty similarly matched, and one is in-state and one is out-of-state, your odds of receiving an interview offer are a bit higher in the in-state program. So you may actually want to choose the out-of-state program to signal, again, assuming those programs are similarly matched. So it may make more sense to just signal the out-of-state program in that case. Now, how do geographic preferences and program signals work when we look at them together? Since emergency medicine only participated in the signaling component and not geographic preferences, this data does not include our specialty, but it comes from all of those other specialties who participated in all of the components of the SUP app. Among applicants who noted a geographic preference, more than 3/4 of their signals were sent to programs located in a census division that they also preferred, meaning that their geographic preference and their signaling aligned. And these applicants had the highest chance of receiving an interview offer. So it's really, really important to understand this aspect. Some applicants have asked if they should choose a different geographic region than their signal, trying to maximize their chances of an interview. I would not advise doing this as your only application strategy. Your signal is most effective if it aligns with the geographic preference. However, it doesn't mean that you only signal programs in the same regions. Your signal independently will increase your chance of interviews, even if it does not align with your geographic preference. The chances of receiving an interview offer were lowest at a program, this one's pretty intuitive, at programs that were not signaled and do not align with the geographic preference of the applicant. And then the data kind of varies for those in-between categories in terms of likelihood for interview offers. So those categories where an applicant signaled a program, but it did not align with their geographic preference, or where an application aligned with the geographic preference, the geographic preference aligned with the program, but it was a program that was not signaled. So it's kind of hit or miss, and that information, that data really varied between specialties in terms of interview likelihood.
All right, so I'd like to cover some of the program rules surrounding program signaling and the guidance that our PDs have been given when utilizing both signaling and geographic preferencing, so you have a better understanding of how they should or should not be using this information. So here are the terms and conditions that programs had to attest to when signing up for ERAS and opting in for program signaling. So they said they are not going to disclose the identity of those applicants who did signal them. They also should not be asking applicants if they participated in signaling or preferencing, where they sent their signals or preferences, why they didn't signal that particular program or region. They are allowed to ask, like, why, like Liz said, why did you choose us? Like, why did you send a signal to us? Or why do you prefer this geographic preference? But if that information is not already provided and those signals are not sent to that program, they essentially cannot ask any more questions about it. And lastly, when they sign up for ERAS and program signaling, they attest that they are not going to use it for rank order list preparation or preference list for SOAP, because that's not their original intent of program signaling. As we mentioned earlier, it's really only supposed to be used in interview phase, in interview offers. All right, so these are some of the guidance that Liz and I just gave to the programs via our CORD webinar last month. So signals, again, should only be used in application review and interview offer. And programs really should not be overweighing signals or preferences. They should really only be considering them as just one piece of the overall application. It's a plus factor, not a qualification. Do not screen out applicants based on a lack of a signal or overinterpret if there is no signal. We've advised or told programs again or reminded them that applicants use a lot of strategy when choosing where to signal. And so, if they're a particularly competitive program, maybe they won't receive a signal, but an applicant may still really want to go there. Again, that goes along with do not assume no signal means no interest. Always assume preferences as denoted by applicants are genuine, and be as transparent as possible on how you intend to use signals. All right, the last item that we want to cover really briefly is the collaboration between the AAMC and Thalamus. So for those of you who are not familiar, Thalamus is a GME interview scheduling company that about 25% of EM programs have used over the past year in scheduling their interviews. Another quarter used something called Interview Broker. Another quarter used a scheduler through ERAS that was free. And another quarter, some homegrown method of emailing with applicants. Now Thalamus is collaborating with the AAMC. So the AAMC's ERAS scheduler is going away completely, and Thalamus scheduler is going to be available for all programs for free if they wish to use it. So what does this mean for you as an applicant? This is really to your advantage. I've unfortunately had a couple applicants in the past who may have missed an interview because they unfortunately double booked and didn't realize because their interview offers were in multiple scheduling systems. And so hopefully it should really prevent double booking and really make things easier for you guys so everything is all in one place. But realize there may still be some programs that are not using this, so make sure you still have your own calendar keeping track of everything. And just a final reminder of the residency application timeline. So ERAS is now open for you to use and to start entering your information. The deadline when you should absolutely not have anything past this is September 27th, because this is when programs can start downloading information and reviewing your applications. But you can start submitting, even though you can start entering now, you can't start submitting until September 6th. But you can submit September 6th and kind of be done early, and that is great. You can have that kind of off of your plate. I highly recommend not waiting till the last minute, till the 26th. Oftentimes ERAS kind of crashes when people wait to the last minute. So you don't want to be sweating it out the day before everything is due. All right, we gave you a ton of information. It's hard to remember all of this, so we want to show you where you can go to look up this information, or if you have additional questions, where you can go to get that information as well. So ERAS has already updated their own website, and you can get there from this QR code or from the web page that I have listed here. What is on here? So they also have their own webinars. They have their own applicant applying guide. They have so many things here. They also have data from the SUP app for the past 2 years. So you can, again, see some of the things that Liz and I were talking about as far as how applicants utilized each component, their opinions on each component, advisors' thoughts, and program directors' thoughts. So all of this can be found here. And on this website is also the ERAS applicant worksheet. I highly recommend checking this out. I found it particularly helpful in trying to figure out what is and is not included in the new ERAS application. So it's just a PDF file, and you can kind of work through it if you want to first work on your application here and then put that information into ERAS. We also have our own EM specific guidance on our CORD webpage. You can get there through this QR code. All of our webinars will be recorded on here, including this webinar. We also have our own EM specific guide. A lot of the information that was provided today is in this guide, but there may be some additional nuances in that guide as well that you might find helpful. And lastly, we did allude to utilizing an experienced EM advisor when choosing where to signal or preferences, et cetera. If we realize that there are a lot of applicants out there that do not have access to an experienced EM advisor, you may be at a medical school that does not have an EM residency program or an academic emergency medicine department. If that is the case, there is this email address that you can email, and you can be linked up with an experienced advisor through CORD. So please utilize this. That is all that Liz and I have for you guys today. Again, you can get to those two major web pages through these QR codes, but we do want to open it up to you guys for questions.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, if you guys want to throw them in the chat, and we can get those answered.
Hopefully the lack of questions means that we answered everything appropriately.
Here we go. Here's one I see. The question is, should couples matching do the same preference signal?
Yeah, couples matching is really, really challenging. And I can't make a blanket statement about it, because I think it really depends on the two specialties that you're applying to. I think if it's two sort of equally competitive places, that it makes sense to do that. But beyond that, it is such an individualized question based on the particular couple and the particular specialties that they're going into.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a different thought, Liz.
Yeah, I kind of like a side thought to that. I think it also depends on what programs are available for a specialty. So if one partner is applying to something that is very competitive, very academic, like neurosurgery, where there's a smaller number of programs, and they're usually at university hospitals, and the EM person really wants more of that community experience, why would you, unless there's so few limited options and you really want to be in that geographic area near your partner. But if there are community options nearby, that's who I would signal, as opposed to the same academic center as the partner. So it depends on what your options are in whatever that geographic range is that you decide is an acceptable time difference for you and your partner.
There's one more question on here, and it was just, what is the email for the CORD advisor? I guess hoping you can pull that slide back up.
Right here.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I guess if there are no other questions, I just want to thank you guys again. Oh, wait, one more here. How do program signals work for combined training programs? I think they mean like EM-IM, I assume, or EM anesthesia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the combined programs for emergency medicine are not participating in signaling. There's so few of them. They would each need to decide, like as a group, if they want to work together to implement that. There are some combined programs in other specialties that have decided that they want to go forward with that, but we haven't had any in EM yet that have decided. So as of now, there's no signals for the combined programs.
The next question says, you can only preference one geographic region, right?
No, you can preference up to 3. And they're not ranked. No one else knows what order that you prefer. You can choose 1, 2, or 3 geographic divisions, or no preference.
I think the next one's for Juana, and I think the answer is yes, but it's, will this session be recorded and available after? I believe it will.
Yeah, so definitely it'll be shared via our RAMS social media, along with we have a dedicated RAMS webinar link that you can look for on our website as well.
Thanks. Do you all advise not overlapping discussion of impactful experiences with the personal statement?
I think personally, I wouldn't. I think if there's some overlap, that's okay, but there's a very limited amount of opportunities that you have to kind of show who you are, explain who you are and what you want. And so I think utilizing each as they're intended is your best method to go about that, to really paint the best picture of yourself and the most holistic picture of yourself. But certainly I can think of some reasons why some of the things that might go into the impactful experiences may also kind of weave into the personal statement too. So I don't want to say never, but I would certainly try to utilize each section as it's intended to paint a better overall picture of you as an applicant.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, you don't have a ton of space to necessarily answer that question. So if you allude to something in one, that is explained more in depth in the other. So, you know, if your impactful experience is that you grew up in a high crime area, you know, and lived near a trauma center, or, you know, there was a medical experience in you or an immediate family member that, you know, drove your passion for medicine, and then emergency medicine, you can expand upon that, you know, in the YEM component of your personal statement without reiterating the entire impactful experience all over again. So just be careful of your word count and your character count.
Yeah. And the other impactful experience essay is only 750 characters, not words. And as we said earlier, 300 characters is 2 to 5 sentences. So then we're talking about 12 to 15 sentences for impactful experiences. So as Liz said, there may be the opportunity to then expand on it, but not necessarily say all the same things.
I think I've got time maybe for one more, if you guys are okay with that. It says, similarly, my advisor encouraged including significant life challenges in the personal statement to show distance traveled. But now that there is this supplement, is the personal statement expected to be mostly YEM/fit/values, etc.?
Yeah, so I don't want to say there is necessarily an expectation given that this is new for everybody this year. So I think it's going to be a transition for programs as well as they begin to review these personal statements. But I think it's just, again, another reiteration of what we said before, that I think it's only to your advantage to try to make them a little bit different so that you are giving programs a little bit more information about yourself.
Great. Well, once again, thank you guys so much for helping us put this on. Seems like everybody had some great questions, and we really learned a lot, even though I'm not going to be going through the process. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us. Don't hesitate to reach out with questions to either of our emails.
Yes. Do we have our email? Did we put our emails? Yeah, we have our emails here. So we'll leave that up for you guys to take down if you have any questions.
Thanks again.
Good luck, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you again, Alexis and Elizabeth and Mitchell. That was wonderful. We did get a really great turnout, and so I feel like everyone learned a lot. Again, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Lana. Bye, everyone.